Good Friday. It is good to be with you today. I've been thinking a lot about relationships. Yesterday, I talked to you a little bit about what it means to be a disciple. And at the heart of being a disciple, of following Christ, learning at his feet, and sharing the good news with one another is a relationship. I'd like to share with you a little bit about how Chad and I formed our relationship. So we had known each other in high school. We really didn't date much in high school. I didn't particularly care for his friends. And so we kind of had our own separate lives, right? So it was maybe 6-7 years after high school that we bumped into each other in our hometown. And we were just in different places in life. We were living in 2 different cities in Minnesota. And here we were in Wisconsin, and we bumped into each other and kind of hit it off. So at that time, he worked during the day and I worked at night, and it wasn't really conducive to spend a lot of time on the phone because of our different work schedules. And so we exchanged emails, and he would write me an email during the day, and I would read it when I got to work, and then I would write him at night, and that's how we communicated. And we'd do that for a couple weeks, and then we would arrange to be back in our hometown together, and we would connect and date and do all the things people do when they're courting. And then we would go back to our lives during the week and email. And I really feel like that's why our relationship developed in the way it did. I feel like I know him better than really anyone I've ever known because so much of our communication was intentional. We couldn't get around body language and have that interaction where you're face to face and you can just sit and be. We had to put our feelings and our hopes and our dreams on paper, and we had to send that to each other. And then there it was. It was there in black and white for us to read and to process and to respond to. And it really created a different sense of relationship with each other. I feel like that's what we get in the scriptures. I've been in the book of Galatians, as I've mentioned to you, and Galatians 2:19 and 20 are the verses that really define who I am. They define who I want to be as a pastor. They define who I am as a person, or at least my desire. Because it's always good to have an idea of what it is define you. I like the words on the page to tell me this is my goal. This is how I feel God speaking to my heart, and this is how I hope that I am reflecting what God is doing in my life. So I just want to read to you. I'm in the Message today. Sometimes I like to read out of the Message because I like the way Eugene Peterson translates the text, not necessarily from a theological, historically accurate perspective, but sometimes the way he uses the words creates just a different understanding. So I want to read to you Galatians 2, verses 19 through 21. What actually took place is this. I tried keeping rules and working my head off to please God, and it didn't work. So I quit being a lawman so that I could be God's man. Christ's life showed me how and enabled me to do it. I identified myself completely with him. Indeed, I have been crucified with Christ. My ego is no longer central. It is no longer important that I appear righteous before you or have your good opinion. And I am no longer driven to impress God. Christ lives in me. The life you see me living is not mine, but it is lived by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And I'm not going back on that. I love the way Peterson reminds us that when Christ lives within us, when Christ lives within me, it's not about my ego. It's very easy for me to get in the way of what God is doing. Sometimes my insecurities make it hard for me to be in relationship with other people because I just worry so much about what other people think of me and how they see me and how they interpret my actions. And I need to put all of that aside and just ground myself in what Christ is speaking to me, how Christ has formed and transformed me according to the written word. Just like my letters with Chad, I can't get around the words on the page. They are clear. It's not my ego. It is Christ within me. I think that that's a beautiful message. It's one I have to cling to. It's one that helps me to be in relationship with other people. I always hate it when I have hurt someone else or when I've done something that's given the wrong impression of my motives or my intentions. And so having that opportunity to come together and reconcile is a gift. It's not always easy, but it absolutely is a gift. And when we do that, we're living into these words to put aside who we are and who we think we are and just be who Christ has made us to be. You know, Paul writes these words after he's had an interaction with Peter that isn't very kind. In fact, he and Peter have disagreed on how they should present the word of God to the people, how they should be proclaiming Christ. And so Paul reflects on who Christ has made him to be, how Christ has transformed him into this new creation. And he writes these words, Christ lives in me. The life you see me living is not mine, but is lived by faith in the Son of God. I hope when you look at my life, that's what you see. And I hope that when you look at your own life, that's what you feel. I'm recording this text this morning, this devotional in the sanctuary, because I want you to know I really miss you. I miss our opportunities to gather together. I miss how we are in relationship with one another, a Christ-centered relationship. I hope that as you hear this word and you read the text yourself, you see what a profound gift you are. Christ has made you to be, for me, for this church, and for the world. I wish you all the best this weekend. I hope it is a joy-filled weekend in which you see God at work in amazing ways. Take care.